Okay, so you want to open a martial arts club. You have been training for years, maybe a decade, maybe longer. You earned your black belt. You have probably assisted classes, maybe even run a few of your own. The vision seems obvious from where you are standing. Find a space, roll out the mats, charge people to learn what you know, and do the thing you love for a living. A lot of people picture themselves walking across a clean floor at 6 in the evening with 40 students lined up in white uniforms. Building something real, teaching discipline, owning the wall, that image is attainable. People have built that life, but between where you are now and that clean Tuesday evening class is a financial architecture that will either make or break the entire venture. And most people who try this do not fully understand what that architecture looks like until it is already costing them money. The martial arts industry in the United States alone is currently valued at $21.2 billion. That number is not going anywhere. But the reason it is concentrated in the hands of a relatively small number of highly profitable schools, and not spread evenly across the tens of thousands of small independent dojos that open every year, is that most people entered this business as martial artists and discover far too late that they needed to enter it as business owners. So let us go through what this actually costs, how you actually make money, and what separates the schools that are still open in year 5 from the ones that are not. The first question most prospective owners ask is how much it costs to get started. The honest answer is, it depends entirely on what kind of operation you are trying to build. The cheapest version of this business is the sub-rent model. You approach an existing facility, a gymnastics club, a community center, a fitness gym, and you rent their floor space during off-peak hours, usually early mornings or mid-afternoons when their core business is quiet. You bring portable puzzle mats, set up before class, and pack them away after. Total startup costs for this model run between $5,000 and $15,000. That includes your mats, your liability insurance, your business registration, and whatever local advertising you need to get your first 20 or 30 students through the door. The risk is low, the overhead is almost zero, but the ceiling is also very low. You do not have your own space. You cannot run evening classes when a gymnastics competition is using the floor. You cannot control the environment, build a brand on the outside of a building, or create the kind of community identity that keeps students coming back for years. The next tier is the dedicated commercial storefront. This is the model most people who are serious about this business eventually land on. You sign a lease on a standalone commercial space, typically 1,200 to 2,000 square feet in a retail or light industrial area, and you build it out as a permanent training facility. Your startup costs at this level sit between $25,000 and $50,000. That covers professional rollout mats permanently fixed to the floor, your lease deposit, which typically requires first and last month's rent, plus a security deposit amounting to between $4,000 and $18,000, depending on the market, basic renovation, exterior signage, student management software, and roughly 60 days of operating cash held in reserve so you are not immediately bankrupt if your first month of enrollment goes slower than expected. The premium version, a custom-built boutique academy with spring subfloors, wall-to-wall padding, changing rooms, a lobby viewing area, and high-quality branded decor, runs between $75,000 and $125,000 or more. These spaces look and feel like serious institutions. They attract a clientele willing to pay a premium for that environment, but they require a much higher student count just to break even. Here is what the build-out actually costs, line by line. Wall padding, covering the protective panels required to prevent injury during sparring, runs between $2,500 and $9,360. Matting for a 1,500 square foot training floor costs between $7,500 and $25,000 for professional grade mats with a shock-absorbing base layer. Renovation work, partition walls, changing rooms, basic plumbing and electrical upgrades, runs between $5,000 and $50,000 depending on the condition of the space. Legal setup, covering your LLC formation, a commercial lease reviewed by an attorney, and custom liability waiver documentation runs between $1,000 and $3,000. Pre-opening marketing. The advertising campaign you run before you open the doors, specifically designed to pre-sell memberships and build your initial student base, should realistically cost between $5,000 and $20,000. Before your first class happens, you have spent between $25,000 and $50,000 on the standard model. You have not made a dollar yet. Now you are open. The lights are on, the mats are down, and students are coming in. Here is what the business now costs every single month, regardless of how many people show up. Rent is the largest fixed expense in the entire operation. Commercial space suitable for a martial arts academy, with the ceiling height, floor loading, and zoning approval you need. Runs between $1,500 and $6,000 a month across most first-tier American and British markets. In high-cost cities like London, New York, or Los Angeles, that figure can exceed $8,000. And in many commercial leases, particularly in retail strips, the base rent is not your total obligation. Triple net lease terms, which are standard in American commercial real estate, require you to also pay a proportional share of the property taxes on the building's common area maintenance costs, and the landlord's building insurance premium. These additional charges can add 15 to 25% on top of the base rent and are often not clearly communicated to first-time business owners until the lease is already signed. Insurance is next. You are running a business where the core activity involves physical contact. Someone will get hurt. The question is not whether, it is when, and whether your coverage will protect you when it happens. General liability insurance for a commercial martial arts school runs between $1,000 and $5,000 annually, depending on the size of your enrollment, the disciplines you teach, and the nature of the physical contact involved. Grappling, sparring, and weapons programs sit at the high end. This is not optional, and it is not an area to economize on. A single serious injury lawsuit without adequate coverage can end the business in months. Instructor payroll is where the math gets complicated for most owners. The healthy benchmark for a well-run academy is that total instructor payroll should consume between 30 and 40% of gross monthly revenue. The moment that figure climbs above 50%, the business has a structural profitability problem that no marketing campaign can solve. Part-time instructors earn between $25 and $60 an hour, depending on experience and local market rates. A lead instructor in a salaried position earns between $35,000 and $55,000 per year. Senior coaches at well-known academies can command $70,000 or more annually. Technology costs are modest but unavoidable. The student management platform that handles your class bookings, automated billing, attendance tracking, and member communication costs between $100 and $300 per month. Credit card and bank card processing fees consume between 1.5% and 3.5% of every transaction processed. On top of that, marketing is the operating expense that surprises people most. Every month, some percentage of your students leave. They move house, they get injured, they get promoted at work, and suddenly have less free time. To maintain your headcount, not grow, just maintain, you need to continuously spend money replacing them. Active academies invest between 5 and 10% of their gross monthly revenue in localized advertising on an ongoing basis. Running all of this together, a mid-size academy with 120 students, a lease at $3,500 per month, one part-time instructor, software, insurance, and marketing will face total monthly operating costs of roughly $10,000 to $11,000 before the owner draws any salary. Every single month, whether 20 students quit this week or none. The primary revenue engine is monthly membership tuition. Standard monthly fees in the United States range from $130 to $185 per adult student. Specialty programs, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, mixed martial arts, or premium self-defense curricula in urban markets, can command between $150 and $300 per month for adult memberships. Kids programs in suburban settings typically run between $100 and $150 per month. At $150 per student across 120 active members, that is $18,000 in monthly recurring revenue. The key word is recurring. It hits your account automatically whether or not you personally teach that week. That predictability is what allows you to sign a lease, hire an instructor, and operate a real business rather than an ad hoc class series. But monthly memberships alone are not how the most profitable academies operate. Successful schools generate up to 30% of their gross revenue from what the industry calls ancillary streams. Additional revenue categories that use existing floor space and existing staff during time slots you are already paying for. Belt testing fees are the most important of these. Every time a student tests for a new rank promotion, they pay a fee ranging from $30 to $75. A black belt examination can command a testing fee of $1,000 or more. Cycling grading events every 2 to 4 months creates a regular, predictable cash event sitting on top of monthly dues. With a profit margin of 80 to 90%, since your primary costs are the instructor's time and the physical belt itself. Private lessons generate a margin of 90 to 95%. A student paying $75 for a 30-minute private session is using mat space you are already paying for, taught by an instructor already on your payroll. 5 private sessions a week produces roughly $1,500 in monthly revenue that sits almost entirely in the profit column. Merchandise, uniforms, gloves, branded apparel, and protective gear carries a 50 to 100% markup on wholesale cost, with a net margin of around 40 to 50% after accounting for inventory and storage. The financial goal of the revenue model is specific. Monthly membership income should cover 100% of your fixed overhead costs. Every dollar generated from testing fees, private lessons, and gear sales then flows almost directly to profit. When those two conditions are true simultaneously, you have a structurally profitable business. The price you set for your monthly membership is not a random number. It is a positioning decision that communicates the seriousness of your academy to every prospective student who inquires. One of the most common and damaging mistakes made by new owners is what the industry calls survival pricing, setting initial tuition rates far below market value in an attempt to attract price-sensitive students. On the surface, this seems logical. Lower prices attract more people. But the compounding effect on the business is negative at every level. When you charge $90 a month in a market where competing schools charge $150, you are not attracting the most committed students. You are attracting the most price-sensitive ones, the people most likely to cancel the moment a competing offer appears or their schedule gets complicated. You now need 67 students to generate the same monthly revenue that 45 students would produce at market rate. More classes, more instructor hours, and a higher administrative burden, all to achieve the same net income as a school that simply charged what its instruction was worth. Family packages counteract churn in a way that single-member accounts cannot. When two children and a parent are enrolled in the same school, the social cost of cancellation becomes significant. You are not just discontinuing a gym membership, you are disrupting a shared family routine and removing the children from friendships built in class. Family plan customers churn at rates approximately 25% lower than single-member accounts. They are the most stable revenue unit in the entire business. The location you choose will shape your student acquisition costs for the entire operational life of the business. And it will do so invisibly, in ways that only become obvious after 12 months of paying rent. A school tucked into a low-rent industrial park on the edge of town might save you $1,500 a month compared to a retail strip. Over 12 months, that is $18,000 in savings. It sounds like a responsible financial decision, but academies located in visible retail corridors, where parents drive past your sign every day on the school run, where your lit logo is visible through a car window on a Tuesday evening, show student retention rates 200% higher than academies in low-visibility industrial settings. The reason is behavioral. For a parent deciding whether to keep their child enrolled, convenience is not a secondary consideration, it is often the deciding one. If the after-class pickup requires navigating an industrial estate with limited parking at 5:30 in the afternoon, they will find an alternative. If dropping off is as simple as pulling to a strip mall parking lot they pass every day anyway, attendance stays consistent and retention stays high. Demographic alignment matters just as much as visibility. A kids-focused program needs proximity to primary schools and family residential neighborhoods. An adult grappling program needs reach into a working-age population with disposable income. A school built in the wrong demographic area, even with excellent instruction and fair pricing, will fight for every enrollment. This is the comparison most people get wrong until their second or third year of operation. Adult students represent the aspirational image of the business. They pay more per month, between $150 and $300 in specialty programs. They are technically interesting to teach. They provide the competitive depth that keeps a serious instructor engaged. But adult enrollment in martial arts carries an annual churn rate of between 35 and 45%. Adults face career demands, family obligations, travel schedules, and minor injuries that escalate into reasons not to renew. In full-contact grappling programs, a single serious sparring injury to a newer student can trigger a visible decline in enrollment as others reassess their risk tolerance. Kids programs operate on a completely different financial logic. A parent enrolling a 7-year-old in a structured martial arts program is not buying fighting technique. They are buying focus, discipline, confidence, anti-bullying resilience, and structured physical activity 3 days a week. Those outcomes are not price-sensitive. As long as the child is visibly improving in behavior and self-confidence, the parent renews. In successful suburban academies, youth programs account for between 50 and 85% of gross enrollment and carry annual churn rates as low as 10 to 15%. Sibling enrollments compound this further. When a household has 2 or 3 children in the program, the switching costs become logistically significant. Cancellation requires consensus across a shared family routine. For most successful suburban academies, the kids program is the financial foundation that keeps the school viable through every slow adult enrollment month. The colored belt ranking system, developed in Japan by Kano Jigoro for judo in the 1890s and later adapted across virtually every structured martial discipline, is one of the most effective retention mechanisms in commercial fitness, and it works not through deliberate design but through behavioral consequence. Behavioral psychology describes something called the goal gradient effect. People accelerate their commitment as they approach a visible reward. A student who just earned their yellow belt is already thinking about orange. The belt system channels that drive into a structured progression ladder that keeps students enrolled not because they have to be, but because they are working towards something specific and visible. From a revenue standpoint, grading cycles every 2-4 months create predictable non-dues income. A school with 120 students running 3 grading cycles per year at an average testing fee of $50 generates $18,000 annually in near-pure margin revenue that sits entirely outside the monthly membership model. But there is a structural failure point embedded in the system that damages academies that do not manage it carefully. In traditional programs like karate and taekwondo, student attrition spikes sharply around the 1-year mark, a phenomenon instructors call the green belt exodus. The curriculum expands, combinations become more complex, and students training once a week hit a difficulty ceiling that feels insurmountable. Without intermediate rank markers, such as stripe systems applied between major belt levels, there is nothing visible to keep a struggling student engaged through the hard part of their development. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the same phenomenon appears after the blue belt is earned. The initial novelty is gone. The gap between blue and purple can feel like years of invisible incremental progress. Academies that do not implement structured milestone tracking during this period, attendance streaks, technique certifications, visible goal markers, lose students at precisely the moment when those students are closest to becoming committed long-term members. Meet John Machado. He is one of 5 brothers from the Machado family in Brazil, a family so deeply embedded in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that they train directly alongside the Gracie family, the men who formalized the sport and brought it to the United States. John moved to California, built one of the most respected BJJ academies in Los Angeles, and became one of the most recognizable names in American grappling. His technical lineage is impeccable. His personal reputation in the martial arts community is essentially untouchable, and running a martial arts academy still created serious financial and administrative strain in the early years. He has spoken in interviews about the gap between being a world-class practitioner and being a competent business owner. The marketing was unfamiliar. Lease negotiations were stressful. The administrative demands of running a commercial gym, billing, scheduling, insurance, staff management, had nothing to do with what 2 decades on the mat had prepared him for. He is not an outlier. He is the rule. Approximately 60% of new martial arts academies in the United States close within their first 24 months of operation. Not because the instruction was poor, not because the students did not enjoy the classes, because the owner did not have the business systems to manage cash flow, replace churning students, and control their cost structure simultaneously. Being a great martial artist and being a great business owner are different skills developed through entirely different kinds of work. This business requires both, and most people entering it have only prepared for one. Now consider the Premier Martial Arts franchise system. Premier Martial Arts is one of the largest branded franchise networks in the American martial arts industry. They sell licensing rights to use their curriculum, their branding, and their operational systems, covering disciplines including karate, kickboxing, and Krav Maga, to owners who want to enter the business with a proven operational blueprint already built for them. The franchise fee alone costs $49,500. Total estimated startup investment runs between $183,650 and $421,800. On top of that, franchisees pay 7% of gross monthly sales in ongoing royalties, plus an additional 5 to 6% of gross monthly sales into a mandatory national advertising fund. The math of those 2 fees alone is significant. A school generating $18,000 a month in gross revenue pays Premier Martial Arts $1,260 in royalties, plus up to $1,080 in advertising fund contributions every single month. Over $27,000 annually paid to the franchisor for rent, payroll, or any other operating cost is addressed. Between 2017 and 2021, Premier Martial Arts faced class action litigation filed by franchise owners across multiple states. The lawsuits alleged that the company's franchise disclosure documents had overstated the financial performance of existing schools, underrepresented actual build-out costs, and heavily promoted a semi-absentee ownership model, implying that franchisees could run a profitable school without being actively present and engaged on a daily basis. Owners who believed that model signed expensive leases and built out facilities based on those projected returns, found themselves in a position where monthly costs exceeded monthly revenue, royalty obligations continued regardless of performance, and no realistic pathway to the profitability described in the disclosure documents existed. What the litigation ultimately revealed is a structural truth about this entire industry. No franchise system, regardless of how recognized the brand, can compensate for an owner who is not deeply and personally invested in building the community inside the building. A martial arts school is not a vending machine business. It is a relationship business. The moment the owner steps away, the community begins to fragment. Here is how the numbers actually play out in practice. 2 owners, same city, same discipline, same size facility. Different results. The first owner runs a mid-size academy with 120 active members paying $150 a month each. That is $18,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Belt testing fees generate roughly $800 a month on a regular grading cycle. 3 private lessons per week at $75 each add approximately $900 monthly. Gear sales contribute another $500 per month. Total gross revenue, roughly $20,200 a month. Monthly expenses, rent at $3,500. Utilities and triple net fees at $600. Insurance amortized monthly at $250. One part-time instructor at 25 hours a week at $35 an hour, totaling approximately $3,800. Software and payment processing at $400. Marketing at 8% of gross at $1,600, and equipment maintenance and cleaning at $200. Total monthly expenses, approximately $10,350. Monthly net profit, roughly $9,850. Annual net income, approximately $118,000. This school runs a structured 90-day onboarding process with check-ins at day 7, day 30, and day 90. Automated billing covers over 89% of members on direct bank transfer. Class fill rates sit consistently between 65 and 80%. The owner teaches less than 30% of the weekly schedule, spending the remainder on marketing, staff development, and retention. Now the second owner. Same starting point. 120 members. But within 6 months, poor onboarding and no structured retention system has reduced the active count to 85 students. Monthly recurring revenue has dropped to $12,750. The owner doubled the marketing spend to compensate, burning around $2,800 a month in digital advertising. But without an optimized landing page and a disciplined follow-up system for free trial participants, the conversion rate from trial to paid membership sits at 15%. The cost to acquire each new student is now approximately $280. Total monthly revenue, roughly $13,500. Total monthly expenses, $11,200, as the elevated marketing spend pushed costs up. Monthly net profit, approximately $2,300. Annual income before the owner draws any personal salary, $27,600. The gap between those two outcomes is $90,000 a year, same city, same discipline, same size facility. The difference is not the quality of the instruction on the mat. The difference is the quality of the retention system, the onboarding protocol, and the conversion process running behind the front desk. The martial arts industry in the United States, the United Kingdom, and across the first world is genuinely and substantially profitable for the owners who understand what they are actually running. The academies generating $150,000 a year or more from a single location did not get there because their founders had better technique than everyone else. They got there because they accepted, early enough to matter, that they were building a commercial enterprise, and that a commercial enterprise requires the same systematic discipline they spent years applying to their training. Most people who open martial arts schools fail not because the market was not there. The market is always there. They fail because they could not make the transition from being a passionate expert in a physical discipline to being a competent manager of a commercial operation. Being the best practitioner in the room does not make you the most effective business owner in the room. Those are entirely different skills, developed through entirely different kinds of work. The ownership of a martial arts academy requires both, and the physical one will not substitute for the business one when the lease renewal arrives. The belt on the wall is what brings the students in. The system behind the front desk is what keeps them paying. So if you decide to open this business, walk in knowing exactly what you are committing to. You are signing a commercial lease, managing payroll, running a marketing operation, and building a retention system, all while teaching classes that students expect to be excellent, regardless of what is happening with your monthly cash flow. The ones who understood that before they signed the lease are still open. The ones who figured it out in year 2 sometimes recovered. The ones who never figured it out are part of the 60% that close before their second anniversary. They were great martial artists. That turned out not to be enough.